Okay, so we are recording. And Anna, you can get started whenever you'd like,
Okay.
because we have a quorum.
Great. It is 7:01, and are we expecting many more people, Michelle?
I think we are expecting Shannon
Okay.
and one other person. So two more.
All right. I'm trying to
There's
Frickin'.
Shannon.
Nobody likes you, computer. All right. It's 7:01, and I now call 7:02, and I now call this meeting of the Commission on the Status of Women to order. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Christina.
Second, Shannon.
Okay, any discussion, changes, or edits? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm one, Anna. And Sarah has her hand raised also.
Sorry, that was for I. I just lowered it for.
Oh, sorry, Sarah was an aye. I'm flipping back and forth between this and the agenda. But if you can just announce your name just to make life easier for Telesco when you're voting.
Sounds good.
Telesco being the minute taker, sorry. All right, our next session is public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment?
I
Okay,
don't see anyone.
and we're moving on quickly from that item of the agenda. On to old business, reports of committees. Do we have a report from the nominating committee? Or have we already chosen a member?
We didn't, this is Claudia, we didn't, the nominating committee didn't meet since the last meeting, but we do have still one vacancy, I believe, so.
No
I don't
report,
know.
since you haven't met since the last meeting then.
No.
Okay.
No report.
Right. Any reports from the research committee?
We also have not met since the last committee, so we do not have updates.
This is not surprising considering the last meeting was December 19th. Any updates from the diversity committee?
I do, Sharon, excuse me, Sharon was not able to join us tonight, and I was looking for the chat. I was going to put the statement that she wanted me to read in that so that Telesco could take it, but I will just read it if you don't mind. I'm going to open up my other email. So
Yeah.
she said, sorry.
I was going to say, if you pull it up later and are able to email it to Michelle or the chat, that would
Perfect.
probably help Telesco.
Great, I'll do that. It's a simple statement. We'll be presenting our deck that we shared with you all a while back to Latoya Fernandez, the newly hired diversity and equity officer at Norwalk, for the city of Norwalk, this Wednesday evening. It is the same deck that was a turnkey document with data that identifies how we can effectively increase the diversity in our boards and commissions in the city. And I will send that to you, Michelle.
That's relatively simple. And I will note for the record that we've been joined by Jasmine Prezi. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is guest speakers. I understand State Representative, I have a request to take the agenda out of order and move on to give the guest speakers a minute to join us and move on to the appointment of a nominating committee. Can I have a motion to take the agenda out of order?
I would like to move a motion to take the agenda out of order.
Thank you, Commissioner Zucco. Any second?
I'll second it, Claudia Connor.
Thank you. All opposed? Sorry, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right, I'm guessing the motion passes unanimously. So we're now going to take this to move on to the discussion of a nominating committee, and I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Yes, thanks, Anna. And Representative Johnson will be joining us in just a few minutes. So thanks for moving the order of the agenda. As you saw on the agenda, we're going to appoint a nominating committee for election nominations for chair and vice chair of the committee. Of the commission next meeting, so February 13th. So we would like to select 3 people to be on the nominating committee for this purpose. They'll be responsible for presenting the slate of candidates next meeting. And anyone interested in nominating themselves or nominating someone else should email these 3 individuals once they've been appointed, including myself, to let us know that they're interested in one of those positions. And please note that being on the nominating committee does not prohibit you from being nominated for one of those positions. And next meeting, as I mentioned, the nominating committee will present that slate, and then we'll have the commission vote in an anonymous way. So is anyone interested in being a member of that nominating committee? Or does anyone have any questions? So
It's actually one of the easier committees you can be on.
Yeah, I think it's just getting those emails, getting together with the other 2 members, and getting organized, and presenting them next meeting. So we appreciate anyone willing to volunteer.
I could be on the nominating.
Thanks, Shannon. Just need 2 more. And I'm happy to have a meeting with anyone who has questions, in case that's helpful. Anyone else?
I don't mean to pressure anybody, but it's a pretty straightforward commitment of just over the next month. And if we don't have, we don't have the system in place, we really can't continue as a commission. So hopefully if 2 people could step up just so we could move this forward.
I can do
And I
it.
can assure you that I do
Sarah.
not want to be chair.
Sorry, who?
So,
Was that in-
sorry, Sarah can be on the committee.
Oh, thank you. And Anna, is that right?
No, I was saying I don't want to be chair.
Okay, so one other person for the committee.
I'd be happy to be on the committee, but I know that there are some representatives that are not here. And in the vein of our keeping true to our own DEI efforts, I'm happy to do it, but if there is someone else on our group that is not here, that would be interested in doing it, that is more representative of different DEI or groups, I'm happy to step aside, but I am also happy to step up if needed.
Okay, well, we do have to appoint people at the meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay, fair enough.
I can
I am
join. This
willing
is
to serve.
Jasmine.
Okay, what, should we replace Christina with Jasmine then?
Christina, is that okay?
Whatever's best for the best of the group, the good of the group, I'm fine with that.
Okay, as chair, I am appointing Sarah, Jasmine, and Shannon to be the nominating committee, and they will report for the positions of chair and vice chair. Anyone who is interested, please contact them or Michelle, and they'll present their slate at the next meeting. Okay, sorry, I'm looking at the agenda again. I think our next speaker will join us in about 4 minutes. So I'm calling this time for chit chat. Did everyone have a nice holiday?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
How about you?
Lovely.
I took my youngest son to school yesterday for the first time, which was, it's been hard today,
Oof.
but
How far?
Rhode Island, he's at a technical school in Rhode Island, so not far, but still.
But
you
far
know,
enough.
Yeah, but not here.
Agreed. My youngest went back on Monday as well. Sunday, I mean.
Yeah. My niece, I got school photos of her and it's the funniest thing. She's a 2-year-old and she's just glaring sternly at the camera. I think she's going to be a dictator.
Actually, may I raise a point of or question, whatever the appropriate Robert's rules is? Michelle, you needed us to fill out the doodle poll, correct, for the retreat? Okay.
Yes. And it's a retreat special meeting where we're identifying 2023 and beyond priorities and goals. Yep.
Exactly. Great. So I for one, am going to take this moment to do that because I didn't do that survey yet. So
Yeah, I was
timing.
I was hoping folks could fill it out by January 14th because I forget the first date option,
The
but it's
26th,
probably,
it was the day after my birthday.
oh, okay. So it's, yeah, shortly after the 14th, enough time to slightly prepare.
And also get to Lesko.
Mhm. So yeah, if you've never filled out a doodle before, you just select all the options that work for you and then we'll pick the one that works for most.
I'm seeing a
Nobody
phone
tried.
number joining us. Is that one of our guest speakers or is that commission member? They're on mute.
I'm not seeing it, but Dominique hasn't.
505 7266.
Oh, the guest. I think that is Chantel. Chantel, is that you? Can you hear us?
No, I think it's Melody. She's saying it's her.
Oh,
She's
sorry.
audio on the phone and video on, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Melody, how was your holiday? Can't hear you.
Thumbs up, thumbs sideways, down.
We hope you had a good holiday.
Sorry, I was being a bad influence asking if you spoke sign language, but my blur apparently messes with my hands. And a guest speaker has joined us. Welcome,
Good
Representative
evening.
Johnson. I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to introduce our guest speaker.
Good evening, Representative Johnson. Thanks so much for joining us. So I'm just going to give a quick bio update about Representative Johnson. She is the 143rd House District Representative representing Norwalk and parts of Westport. She was an at-large Common Council member where she was the chair of the Community Services Committee, a member of the Ordinance, Public Works, Public Safety and General Government, and ad hoc Sustainability and Resilience Committees. Her background is in effective, strategic, and passionate communications at mission-driven social impact startups that have a lot to do with social justice issues and civil rights issues. And she was just sworn in a few days ago. So thanks for lending your time and sharing your expertise. She's going to share with us a little bit about how to advocate for legislation in this session and also is willing to share more updates as the session progresses. So we'll hand it over to you, Dominique.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. Hi, Chair Keegan. Hey, everybody. I hope I didn't keep you waiting. I was literally physically zipping from Hartford and then was virtually zipping over from a town committee meeting. Just one day, lots of meetings. So I appreciate it. And I see so many familiar faces on. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for the invitation. I know that right now, as Michelle said, I just got sworn in Wednesday, so we are in the thick of it up in Hartford to just get the on-ramps going for new legislation. So you all are way ahead of the schedule in terms of getting prepared. So this is great timing to be here with you. So thank you. I don't know what would be best if people have questions, or if I know I shared with Michelle like a graphic that the House of Representatives up in Hartford uses. It's really seemingly like a lot of steps, but I can kind of show you if we want to do a screen share, like where we are in our process up there. So it gives you a good sense of where you all want to be as commissioners who want to advocate and help our residents advocate for issues that matter to them around issues of the commission. So I'm happy to talk about anything. I don't know if we want to start with questions, or if it's best if I just kind of give you all a kind of update as to where we're at in my new role and then where we are in the process. Does that sound good?
I think an update sounds best.
Awesome. Oh, thanks, Anna. Nice to see you. Right. So right now, bills are being proposed. The deadline to propose a bill is this coming Friday. So this is really it. So if there's a bill, if you or anybody you know in Norwalk has an answer to the question, there ought to be a law that ... now, between now and as soon as possible, to contact your representative. If it's me, let's talk. Because this is, as I understand it, especially this is the time when if an idea for a bill is going to be proposed by individual legislators for the whole term, it's between now and Friday. Bills can come out of committee at this session and the next year. So it's not that this is the only time that bills can be proposed, but just the time for individual legislators to propose bills is right now. But again, that doesn't mean we won't propose bills coming from committee. Those I've learned to call proposed bills because they come out of committee. So I am on education, higher education, employment advancement. That's where our workforce development legislation comes out of. And as well on judiciary, where a lot of legislation goes through judiciary. So I'm really happy with those committees. And the good news is that some of my colleagues on our delegation in Norwalk are in completely different committees. Some of that's by design. We really wanted to be sure Norwalk had voice across committees. So you can also take a look on the website to see kind of the committee members, and you'll find friendly names there from Norwalk in a bunch of different committees. So another good thing is, we talk to our committee chairs as legislators about our ideas, and a lot of times that's how we can get ideas put into bills, is through the process of it going through committee. So not all is not lost if an idea is not proposed as a bill, so to speak. From what I understand, there's also plenty of opportunity for us to bring it up in committee and to talk about it in conversation, so it can be a part of other legislation that's been proposed potentially. Depends on the idea, of course. So the cool thing about the website, as I've learned, I think it's cga.ct.gov. And should I screen share, or what's
have
the
it.
easiest?
Yeah, let me
we should-
screen share it right now. Hang on.
Perfect, because now it's a good point. Thank you, Michelle. That's a great segue to this is something that Representative Thomas before me would often put in her emails or email blast to constituents as a reference. This is literally what as I said, the House of Representatives uses, and what we use to give to constituents. And as you'll see, we're right at the very beginning. The proposed bill is the stage we're at right now. Anybody proposing bills right now, the bill is sent to the clerk, and some of our bills, if they've been proposed a week or two ago, are at the end of the first line. But I believe we're not, no one yet in the process has gone down to the second level yet. Some bills have been referred to committee. So that's where we are. There's a bill tracker on the cga.ct.gov website, and the public can use it. The cool thing is it's very transparent. If a bill has been proposed and the clerk has received it, it is visible. So you could at any time go on this website and just look at the bills that have been proposed. You can search for things like, if you're really interested in So electric vehicles, you could search, for example, for like electric vehicles and see if any have been proposed with that language in it. So that's at cga.ct.gov. And that's a good way of seeing what's been proposed. Now, again, we won't know what actually makes it referred to committee and then what the committees will take up until sometime in the next few weeks. I'm just starting, and my colleagues are just starting to have committee meetings this week. As you probably heard, the Capitol was closed Thursday and Friday last week because of a very tragic accident with one of our colleagues. And so we're just now starting our committees this week, and it'll move quickly because a lot of these bills that have been referred to committee will be voted on, as I understand it, later on. I have a committee where this is happening. And what that fundamentally means is that we're voting on the idea. Like, we're voting on the idea that we decide, okay, this idea sounds good, we want to take it up, is as I understand it. So that's happening in some committees later this week with bills that have already been proposed, say last week. I heard a lot of bills were entered the afternoon we were all sworn in. So there's a lot of good stuff to take a look at there. So if, for example, the commission here is interested in working on women's workforce development or issues with reproductive freedom or issues, regardless of the issue, issues about childcare, you're going to see, I'm not sure what the priorities for the commission would be, but you would be able to see any of those things as they're proposed as they come down the line. But a lot of bills are going to be proposed, and as I understand it, only a few hundred make it through. So it's a real, making it through is a big deal, ratio wise, as I understand it. Does anybody have any questions about this graphic at all? As I said, we're just at the first line. And then, as you'll notice, the committee is where the bills will live. And as I've been told, we're in committee meetings and hearings for the next month or so. We really, the bills will go to the House itself after it goes through the committee process. And as I mentioned, not all bills that make it into the committee will make it out. Like Schoolhouse Rock, some of the bills die in committee. So as I understand it. I can, if you want me to explain a little bit of what I've learned in the past month or so about what OFA means and OLR means, I'm happy to, but that may be for the Lieutenant Governor or another visit with folks.
I have a question.
Oh, yes, of course.
Are there any bills that you're proposing or that you know of that you think of would be of particular interest to the committee?
Well, let's see. It's hard to know, knowing, because unfortunately, I think it depends kind of what your goals are for the year. I don't want to kind of put my imprint on it, but what I know is that for me, I have an interest in some workforce development, and I, being on the higher education committee, that is where that lives. And so for me, I've at least two bills that would be related that may have some interplay. One, though, is more generally for folks who are DCF, Department of Children and Families involved, trying to extend the eligibility for tuition from the new PACT Act up to 30, because right now it's just 23. But that's something we're going to talk about in committee. As well, there's UConn students who've come forward to us who have asked. I'm a member of the Reproductive Rights Caucus as well as the LGBTQ caucus, and there's a bipartisan women's caucus. But the work the UConn students have asked us to do is to make sure that there's at least information, if not access to services for reproductive health care on the public college and university campuses. That's something that I hope to kind of at least co-sponsor something on, if not co-introduce with some colleagues. And I'm also very interested in early childhood education, childcare. So I'm talking preliminarily with some colleagues about making sure we have literacy program for 0 to 5-year-olds. It's a heavy lift as I'm envisioning it now, but I'm in conversation to see if there's something we can't propose now, or there may be an idea. Since I'm on the education committee, that could be an idea that gets folded in, as I said, to like a proposed bill. But there's a lot of things that I'm hearing are coming through on mental health care. That's another thing that's really important, because a lot of the folks I talked to in our district, that was primary concern. So I know that there are ways that for example, that's something you all want to advocate for. There's mental health is going to be prominent, I believe, yet again in this session. At least that's my hope, and I'm hearing that there will be some bills proposed there. I also hope that we have some bills that come through for workforce development, and I will do my that's a passion for me to advocate for particularly women who've had to stop out during the pandemic for work to have a voice on that issue. As I mentioned, the reproductive healthcare bills coming through. And I'm trying to think what else, you know, it really, like, as a member of the LGBTQ caucus, there are going to be some bills for my community there as well that will probably have a lot of overlap with your mission, I'm assuming, with also gender nonconforming individuals, non-binary individuals, and so forth, like the kind of overlap there. Some things have been canceled. We were supposed to have a press conference this week, but some things have been canceled because of we're having still some remembrances at the Capitol, so we'll have to see. But a lot of it will just show up on the bill tracker, to be honest. So I think that's the best thing to do. Is you could just have depending if this is your thing, you could start searching on the bill tracker on Friday to see what made it through proposed, and then if there's something that really looks exciting to you, that would be when you can contact us to let us know that you really think that's a good idea and we should advocate for it. Hopefully it gives you some of it, Chair. I don't know.
Well, thank you. I think we have some more questions too. Sorry to interrupt, but I know that your time is valuable and you have another meeting coming up.
No, it's great to talk with you all. This is great.
So Claudia and then Christina, and raise your hand if anyone else has a question.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much for being with us, and also really want to thank you for being such a strong advocate for reinstating the commission, and know that you played a huge role in that. So thank you so much for that. I have kind of a basic question, which is so from this large number of bills that are proposed, and what is that filtering process that kind of leads to the small percentage that actually kind of go the distance? And then the second part is sort of at what point during the year is there an opportunity for the commission, for example, to submit, and pardon my ignorance on this, but submit either comments on a bill or input on a bill?
Hi, Claudia, thank you so much for those words. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you. That's a great question. And those are great because as I understand it, the committee and the committee chairs have a lot of purview as to what becomes an agenda in terms of an item, like a bill that gets taken up by a committee. And most, if not all, don't quote me because I am first term right now, my first week, but we have joint committees. So for example, I'll use example of higher education committee because we're going to meet this week. The House chair and the Senate chair typically meet, I think, and have conversations about the agenda, the settings of that committee. So there's a counterpart in the Senate who's the chair, and then there's some vice chairs, but as I understand it, the chairs do have a lot of discretion to answer your question. And then another piece to that is there's something called I believe it's called a selecting committee. And off the top of my head, I'm remembering, I know at least Christine Conley, Representative Conley, is, I believe, sits on that as well. And that's at least for the House Democrats. But they work with the Speaker of the House, the majority and minority leader, I believe, to really drill down in terms of these are the bills we want to really make, to kind of champion. These are the bills that I think they filter out at that stage as to what we'll eventually see on the floor. And, frankly, I've been told there's plenty of opportunity to co-sponsor a bill as a legislator up till the very last minute, even right before the governor signs it. And some folks have said, you may want to wait a little bit because sometimes these bills can go in as wanting to give a free kitten to everybody in Norwalk, and it comes out completely different in a way that you would absolutely not want your name on it. So literally these bills can change drastically. So that's another thing about this process is that even if it makes it through, they can really change. So I think a short answer, would be, these chairs have a lot of power, the selecting committee has a lot of power in concert with leadership. And then frankly, proposers, bill introduce, like if you introduce a bill as a legislator, you really have to champion it, as I've understood, and make sure that your colleagues will come along with you. And that can really make or break the legislation too. And so to your point, if you have a lot of constituents that reach out, we're going to have public hearings on these bills and on the ideas of the bills too. So that, as you see in like the flow chart here on the second line, the committee holds hearings for the public. And that's the great thing, is we're still having testimony on Zoom. You don't have to drive up to Hartford like you did before the pandemic. The committees will be hybrid. So legislators and they're public meetings, so you all can watch them on Zoom. And if you go to cga.ct.gov under citizen information, you'll find a menu, and it's everything from find your legislator based on your home address to like become a part of the process to this PDF. And also there's something called testifying at a public hearing. And that's a really good, more succinct than me, kind of treatment of how you could testify at a public hearing. And as members of the commission, I'll just say this, that if a bill comes forward that you feel very passionate about, and let's say it goes through the education committee, just as an example, or any committee, frankly, you can ask a representative from Norwalk, obviously, to testify, and you can stand, and we get kind of first line, first in the line, so to speak, as I understand it. And I've been told it can be very impactful if we have folks standing behind us who are directly impacted by the legislation or are huge advocates in the community for this legislation. So if you wanted to come up to Hartford because you feel very passionate about something, you could definitely coordinate with us in the delegation, and we could make sure that I mean, I don't want to volunteer my colleagues, but like, that would be something that I think could be very impactful. So, but definitely.
That is super helpful. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're very welcome.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Christina.
Yes, hello, Dominique. Very excited to hear your committee assignments and that
Right.
you're working on. Those are near and dear to my heart. And
Yeah,
thank you
of
for
course.
that. I think you actually nominated many of us or recommended many of us for appointment
Ah.
to this commission. I think. Thank you. My question's kind of I guess a techie one, and I'm not even sure if you would know, or maybe Michelle would know. But with the bill tracker, is there a notification system so that if we put in keywords like gender and women, et cetera, that or childcare, whatever we deem our priorities, that if there's a bill that comes up that is inclusive of that keyword, it would notify us?
Yes, as I understand it, and I've just started using it myself, but as I understand it, you can save a search and you can decide how you want to be notified. This is such a great question. It's so great to see you, Christina. I know I'm really excited about my one committee assignment in particular with workforce, but yes, so you can decide if it's going to email you, how frequently it would, anytime a ping, so to speak, comes up about the keyword. Yes. So that's the cool part too. If you save a search in the bill tracker, you can decide the frequency and the means by which you would be notified, which is great because, as you know, bills are going to be added all the time between now and Friday, and I think you can even choose if changes are made to a specific bill. You can follow a very specific bill by bill number. If there's one you really love and you want to get updates on changes. Yeah. So that's a great question.
Terrific. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I think Shannon has her hand up.
I do. Dominique, thank you for taking the time to be with us your first week out of the gate.
Right.
Everything you gave us was really, really informative. I really need to learn about what happens up at the state level. That was great. Just kind of the breakdown of how things go. We look forward to working with you going forward as we see what bills, move forward and what we can help you with too.
Absolutely. Oh, Shannon, you there? Oh, hey.
I'm here.
Who's ever sharing, we're seeing your screen.
Oh, that's
Oh,
funny.
yes, that's right.
Oh, that's okay, actually,
Oh, it's the
because
question?
we have
Oh, right.
we have a
Oh,
question from Sharon, who couldn't be here this evening, who also helped reinstate the commission alongside Representative Johnson. So shout out to Sharon, who couldn't join us tonight. But her question, as you can see, is from your experience with the Common Council, what can you tell us about the opportunity to have a line item in the city budget for women?
That's a great question. And first, I just want to say thanks to Shannon. I wasn't sure with the screen share. I appreciate what you said, Shannon, and I totally, anytime anybody has any questions about the process, as I get to know more, I'll be even hopefully a better resource. So thanks, Shannon. I really appreciate that. And I'm happy as things, progress to kind of at least give you my perspective on certain things. And if not, I can direct you to some of my colleagues who might be working on the bill itself. And I'd be happy to make that introduction to you over email too.
Awesome. You've got a lot under your belt in just a week. I'm very impressed. That was quite the presentation for like, I just raised my hand last week. So you're off to a strong start.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I guess hopefully, it does pick up quickly. So I think I'm just trying to keep up and I appreciate that. We're good. And I'm back to Sharon's question. Yeah, so with the Common Council, oh boy. So, and I know Shannon, you were a council member. You can help with this too. Not to put you on the spot, but I feel like this is a really good question. And I know that, frankly, just bringing it back to one of the reasons I thought it was important to work to help facilitate reinstating this commission is that it, for me, started from a question as a council member. I joined the council and I started thinking about and asking, my colleagues, like, where are women and girls in this budget, right? How do we know? Is it possible to even know what we're allocating funds to, such that what are the impacts for women and girls in Norwalk? And so that would be like a dream for me to be able to like directly kind of see that in the budget. But frankly, the line items are done right by departments. And I think what I'm assuming what Sharon's talking about is not a line item for the commission per se, but just for women in general. But I'm kind of inferring. And I think that advocating for funds to be allocated, as I understand it, is something council members can do on your behalf as residents of Norwalk. Oftentimes what will happen is the Board of Estimate Taxation, they are the ones that make decisions about how much of, they do the interviews in the meetings with all the departments about their budget requests. They're the ones that decide how much of the line item will be funded for the budgets. The council sets the cap, and that is our role. So we set the cap, i.e. the overall amount that we are going to fund for the operating budget. So, as the case often with what happens is that if the cap is kind of set in such a way where the budget rather will be balanced according to what's been proposed. And that means, the BET, generally speaking, makes those decisions. But if we set a cap, that may make some of the decisions the BET makes have a little bit of some guardrails, for lack of a better term. So I would argue if the opportunity to have a line item in the city budget really, if it's for the commission, then that's one thing. If it's for just generally for funding for women, then you could either see it two different ways. You can really advocate for programs and services directly for women in certain city departments and ensure that they get the funding they've requested from the BET. And then, as a council member, I often advocated for certain things based on what I was hearing from constituents, with department chairs, with my colleagues, department heads, with my colleagues in caucus in particular. And then, if it's just a line item for women, then I would, is just my own personal advice. I would say to go to the office of the mayor and go to council members and if you feel more comfortable doing that, but just to generally be able to make sure that there's a vision that needs funded, then you can go to the people who make those decisions, i.e. the mayor's office, Board of Estimate Taxation, potentially. But certainly your council members as representatives can then advocate for a need that needs to be met with a budget line item.
Michelle, do we fall under any particular department?
I don't believe so. So I think the general advice that Representative Johnson gave serves well.
Yeah, and this was one of my biggest frustrations, honestly, with, it wasn't a, well, it was hard because as a council member, I would love to have said to constituents like, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but it's the BET, right? Like, unfortunately, that really makes like specific line item decisions. But I think anything's possible in terms of just, if there's a vision, mobilizing people around it to have conversations, I think could be an amazing start. Yeah.
Yeah, just to echo the prior council experience, I think what Representative Johnson said is perfect. We've got to have, I would love for that to be on our goal list, to have something tangible. And that's what we're going to need, something tangible to say to the BET, to the mayor, to the council. If you give us this, we can deliver on this. And I think we're still learning to crawl, kind of. We're not quite ready to run with all of this and getting our legs under us and figure out what our priorities are going to be. But I think there's always an opportunity to speak to the mayor, to speak to the BET, and I know the council will listen to us. We just have to figure out what that target is.
Thanks, Shannon. That's well said. Does anyone have any other questions for Representative Johnson, or should we let her go to her next meeting and welcome Stephen? Is everyone good? Thank you so much, Representative Johnson. We
Thank
really
you very
appreciate it.
much.
The caucuses and
Thank you
committees
all.
you're on are so vital and right up our alley. So
Thanks so
I'm-
much.
I'm
Sherry.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. It feels a little bit like being home because, I've had the opportunity to meet all of you, saw you sworn in, and yeah, this is so great to be with you because I feel like some of the issues, please don't hesitate to reach out because we share so many of these passions. So thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you for
Thank-
coming.
thank
Thank you
you.
all so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So as a former department head for BET, you usually want to be under a department's budget because that's how they review things. So that's something we may want to look into. Sorry. Welcome to our next guest speaker, and I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to introduce.
Yes, hi, Stephen Hernandez. Thank you for joining the city of Norwalk again. You're soon going to be a celebrity in Norwalk. We appreciate your time. I'm just going to share a little bit of your background, and maybe folks can just introduce themselves too, since Stephen isn't as familiar with Norwalk as Representative Johnson is. But a little bit of background about Stephen Hernandez. He's currently the executive director at Connecticut Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. He's an experienced attorney, leader, and collaborator in public policy, and has experience in advising others in cutting-edge policy and research, and collaborating cross-culturally with youth, family, state, local, and national stakeholders with the private and public sectors, business, and philanthropy. And today he's going to share some of the, sorry about my dog, share some of the mission of the Connecticut Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity, share some of their 2023 and beyond goals, as well as achievements related to gender equity and gender equality. So Stephen, thanks so much for joining us. Do you want everyone to quickly introduce themselves? Okay, perfect. If you want to say your name, and anything else you'd like to share. Anna, do you want to start?
Sure. My name is Anna Keegan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the chair of this committee at least until next month, and the director of housing operations at the Norwalk Housing Authority. Christina, you're next on my thing. I'm just going to go by my screen.
Fair enough. Right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Stephen. Nice to see you again. We actually serve on the 2Gen Advisory Council together for the state of Connecticut. I'm here as a resident of Norwalk, born and raised. My other hat is with CT State and Workforce Development. And I will call on Melody.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh,
Melody, if you're having audio problems, why don't you type it in and we'll say it for you at the end. let's bump it to Claudia.
Thanks. Hi, Stephen. I'm Claudia Connor, and obviously a resident of Norwalk. I'm currently the vice chair of the commission, and professionally work for, have always worked in the nonprofit space. I'm currently a senior director with Church World Service in their U.S. programs, working with refugee, resettlement, immigration, unaccompanied minors. So thank you so much for joining us. Oh, sorry, I'll turn it over to Yvonne.
Thank you, Gloria. Hi, Stephen. This is Yvonne Suko, also a Norwalk resident. Professionally, I have been in nonprofit like Gloria for a very, very long time. Primarily right now working with immigrants and building one community, the Center for Immigrant Integration. And also I do volunteers throughout town with several other organizations like the Norwalk Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and a few educational places as well. So it's great to meet you. Sorry, let's go with Shannon, I guess, or Sarah.
Good evening. My name is Shannon O'Toole Janderko. I'm a member of this commission, and I'm also on the board of trustees for the Lockwood Matthews Mansion here in town. Professionally, I work for a private equity firm in Westport, and we're excited to hear you speak tonight. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, Sarah.
Thank you. Hi, Stephen. My name is Sarah Rendon Garcia. I grew up in Norwalk, and I am currently a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard Grad School of Education. I study immigrant families that originate from Latin America and are living with mixed status families in the US. I'm also on the board of Norwalk Acts, and I'm also excited to, I'm the chair of the research committee subcommittee on this committee. So I'm really actually excited about hearing about your work, because I looked at your website and trying to figure out what to do with our committee.
Thanks, Sarah. I think we have Jasmine on the phone.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Hi, Stephen. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. My name is Jasmine Prezi. I'm a resident of Norwalk, of course, and I am on the nominating committee and on the diversification of boards and commissions committee. And I am a director of a mentor program here in our Norwalk Public Schools.
Thank you. And I don't think we have Chantel on the phone. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. And Melody, will, as soon as you email that over, we'll be happy to share it. Thank you. Okay, do you want to get started, Stephen?
Thank you so much. Well, it's just so wonderful to be here with all of you. You know, I think someone alluded to the fact that I've gotten to know Norwalk very well over the years. I think my first falling in love with Norwalk happened in our early literacy work with some of your elementary schools in Norwalk, and just seeing how parent leadership and early literacy really came together to expand equitable access to literacy opportunities for young people in Norwalk. And then, of course, our relationships have developed after that. So I'm just really excited to be here again. I run it's so exciting as well to come after Representative Johnson, because I think her presentation and what we do at the legislature really do buttress each other. So as you said, I run an agency of the legislature that is the successor in interest to 6 former commissions of the state of Connecticut. The very first one, of course, and the oldest serving one, was the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women. After that, the commissions expanded. We had the Commission on Children. We had the Commission on Latino and Puerto Rican Affairs, African American Affairs, Asian Pacific Islander, the Commission on Aging as well. And what these commissions did over the years as they were created is that they really lifted up the voices of the under-resourced populations of the state, including the women of the state of Connecticut. As we know, all you need to do to see the disparities in leadership in the state of Connecticut is look across the Senate and the House floor. This is what I say to my staff. Look across the Senate and the House floor, and you see the disparity in leadership and access and opportunity in the state of Connecticut as it has historically been modeled and represented, and as it continues. So I'm excited to partner with the Governor's Commission, the Governor's Council on Women and Girls, and with commissions like yours and councils like yours, because it's so critically important that each of our towns, each of our municipalities have a role in ensuring that we keep our eye on our own goals and the ball that we're trying to move forward, and that is equitable access to opportunity for women and for the other populations that we represent. Over the years, those 6 commissions were consolidated, as you know, for reasons that really tell the story, I think, about our legislature, tell the story about leadership and their priorities. We were consolidated as if we could just kind of bring together the work of 6 powerful commissions that were created in their own right for their own purposes. And they were ultimately, it was for budgetary reasons and political reasons, you know, and eventually there were suggestions that perhaps we didn't need these commissions anymore, that we didn't have a problem of disparity with women. We no longer had a race problem in the state of Connecticut. All the kids were doing great. And then, of course, our social justice crisis and the pandemic happened. And what happened is that we realized that women were disproportionately impacted, people of color were disproportionately impacted. All of the old ways in which we had inequitable access to not only opportunity, but help were revealed during pandemic and the social justice reemergence of consciousness for the state of Connecticut. And here we are. What we are now is a fully staffed arm of the legislature. We advise the legislature on 4 major areas. One of them is health. The other one is educational success. The third is economic success. And the fourth is freedom from discrimination. Now, how does this work in practice? In practice, the way that I like to think about it is that we staff the legislature, the Senate, and the House in a nonpartisan way. We work with communities directly, and we work with the legislature directly. Our mandate allows us to not only look toward leaders and advise them on best practices, what's happening around the country, what are some of those interesting and powerful things that are happening in community in the state of Connecticut, but also to work directly with community. There's a civics component to the work that we do. We train on family civics and engagement, on youth civics and engagement through our Parent Leadership Training Institute. So we are at our core a civics shop in addition to being advisors to the legislature. What that does is it empowers us to look toward community and say, here are the elements of how a bill becomes a law. I love the presentation that Representative Johnson presented for you. We all know that the old song of the little "I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill," there is the procedure, the process of how it is laws become policy, or policy and proposals become law. But then there's the truth. And the truth is much, much more complicated. Yes, there is a hearing process, but there's also the negotiations, the bartering of our democratic principles in order to reach some level of consensus or to make movement. And that is often where we think that our eyes should be most keenly focused, because that is where the decisions are made about us, without us. And so what we do as an agency of the legislature that works and can work with you directly is, firstly, we tell you the truth about the process. We engage you in the process. There are many ways in which we do that. We can help you with public fora. We can help you with draft legislation that we provide legislators. We work behind the scenes because we are, unlike lobbyists who can only remain outside of the velvet rope, my staff and I actually work within the legislature, on the floor of the House, on the floor of the Senate, to advise leaders directly. So those are some of the nuts and bolts of how it is that we operate as an agency of the legislature. Again, we're nonpartisan. I am a selected official appointed by the House and the Senate in a nonpartisan way. I don't work for the governor. I work for the legislature, and I work with communities directly. So there is an element of freedom and truth-telling in the work that we do that is necessary in the work that we do, that's written into our mandate in the work that we do. Now, I know some of you had a couple of questions, or what are some of the big items that we're following for this next legislative session? I think some of them already exist in the psyche of what several of you do. And thank you, by the way. Your introductions really tells the story not only of Norwalk, but also the power of how it is that you not only commit yourselves professionally, but the work that you do on a volunteer basis to help improve the lives of both residents and marginalized peoples wherever they may be, from wherever they may hail. So that is, to me, I think, part of the secret sauce of some of our towns and why it is that I love them so much. Multi-generational success is something that we're really focusing on over the last few years. 2Gen, as you mentioned, Christina, 2Gen as a concept began as this idea of what would it be like if the family were at the center of everything that we did and in every way that we operated. And of course, when we started asking the family to behave in a certain way, right? Share information with each other, understand that you can build resources in order to build your economic mobility, to build your access to economic engagement. We asked families to focus on education, but also focus on workforce opportunity. But then, of course, that begged the question, what are agencies, what are systems of government doing to do that as well? How are we sharing information? How are we actually skilling up, understanding what families are experiencing from their perspective, not from ours, not just from research that is elevated to the level of academia, but from the life experiences of people. And that's how 2Gen evolved from being simply a human service model to being also an economic engagement model and a family-focused, family voice-focused model that we know today. 2Gen started a long time ago, actually. It was redefined and refined under the Obama administration. It survived the Trump administration by rebranding as a whole family approach to jobs, which I thought was really brilliant. It's always been nonpartisan in the way that it works. And now we're focusing on cutting edge issues across the country and here in Connecticut, such as benefit cliffs. What happens when mom or dad or family make $1 more and lose $3 because of the strange ways in which we write our laws and provide incentives or disincentives to work and to thrive. So 2Gen is big. Another one is the different way in which we price and create opportunity commodity across gender. What's called affectionately, but it tells a bigger story about how it is that the business and commerce really runs afoul of equity, and that's the pink tax, so-called. And that is something that we're really going to be focusing on this year. Equity in the way in which we price, the way in which we market, because women are paying more for less. And that's something that isn't unique to Connecticut, but something that we hope to address this year as a legislature. Also, small business. There are incentives, as you may know, for small businesses, for minority-owned small businesses. Counted among those incentives are women. So how is it that our agency that receives those resources to support small business and community, how are those resources making them their way to women so that they can start their own small businesses wherever they may be? Is there equitable access to those resources? Oftentimes what you find when you have set-asides for minoritized populations, because the set-asides are perhaps intentionally limited and create their own unintended consequences because of that, the biggest unintended consequence, or perhaps a consequence that no one really cares about when they're making these decisions, is that it causes people who are minoritized to fight among themselves for meager resources. And what we try to promote at the commission and from our vantage point is that minoritized populations should not be caused to fight amongst themselves for meager resources, when the incentives and the opportunities should be equitably accessible to people who have been historically left out of the conversation of business and success, small business being a real focus for the state of Connecticut. And finally, reproductive rights. Reproductive rights is something that that we are blessed in the state of Connecticut to have not only extraordinary access to, but also expanding access. But as in every state in the country, we want to make sure that that access remains vibrant and that it remains accessible equitably to all populations of people in the state and women in the state. And that's critically important because we see, that many years ago, if you would have asked, is it true? Is it possible that we could be rolling back some of these critical protections? Even I would have hoped and thought that it was not possible in the modern era. And here we are. So we have to remain vigilant on all these issues. Those are some of the big items. I'm sure that Representative Johnson mentioned other more nuanced items. One thing that I like to think about for marginalized and minoritized populations, women among them, is that I don't just think about the deficit side of the question of how it is that women may be suffering and women may be, their access may be diminished. I also like to think of the asset side of the conversation, which is why we think of equity and opportunity. How is it that we are not only promoting representation across the state, economic vibrance among women in the state and other marginalized populations. So that's a little bit about us. I'd love to entertain any questions that you may have about how we may collaborate. I want you to know a little bit more about us so that we can tease your brain about collaboration. And we are available to you. Each one of these areas that I described has a staffer that is devoted to the issue. Our work on women's issues is really really housed under the jurisdiction of Rosemary Lopez on my staff, but we work very closely with Maddie Granado, who is a member of our board, of our advisory board, and also a high-level staffer at Quelf, and also has the finger on the pulse of so much of the work that's happening at the state level. And we work very closely with the Council on Women and Girls on all of the issues that I mentioned and more. So I welcome your questions, and I'm just so happy to be here with you.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you for all of that information and all of the work that the commission is doing. I'm sure that we have questions because I think you really wrung a lot of people's interests in terms of all the great work you're working on. Does anyone want to start? Do you want to raise your hand? If anyone sees a raised hand that I can't see, please let me know. Go ahead, Claudia.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much, Stephen. That was incredibly comprehensive and helpful. And we are going to be having a special meeting later this month or next to really kind of set our priorities as a commission for 2023. So I feel so grateful that we have this understanding of the role of the work that you're doing, the specific kind of big areas. And then also I hadn't really realized sort of the advising and community engagement nature of what you're doing. And so I don't really have a question, but I just think I just wanted to thank you, and just say that I think it would be great if after we kind of set our priorities, or maybe in the process of doing that, we could reach back out to you and maybe connect with the people on your staff whose work would align with that, so we could maybe explore how we could collaborate over the year to really amplify things you're doing, but also kind of learn from you and see how we could, really make progress on whatever it is we choose to do this year at the local level here in Norwalk. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
Christina?
Did Sarah have her hand up before me? I thought she did.
You were first.
Oh, okay. It's just a quick question. Stephen, from my recollection, do we have a 2Gen newsletter, or for some reason, I'm trying to remember where maybe we as a commission can kind of get a capsulation of what you were just talking about
Sure.
for different projects. But I seem to, I think 2Gen has a newsletter, but I could be wrong. It could be one of other groups I'm involved
So
with.
2Gen is interesting because it's been the subject of really deep thought and exploration for a few decades now. The Kellogg Foundation and the Aspen Institute are some of the premier think tanks about what 2Gen means on all these different entry point levels. So not just from a human service model, a child care model, but also from an economic success model, from the investment side of the equation. And it's really about whole family success. And we meet family where they are. It's not just the traditional nuclear family as we have as the story has been told, but really I don't think has ever existed. It's the network that we call family, and family really is a microcosm of community, and community, of course, the microcosm of the state. So Kellogg and Aspen are really the centers of gravity. There are 2Gen reports that have issued from the state of Connecticut. There is one that is coming very soon. And of course, Melvette Hill, my colleague Melvette Hill, is really the go-to staffer for the work for us. Now, Marjorie Hall has now taken over the role of being the statewide coordinator for 2Gen. She is absolutely brilliant, and she is actually coordinating the work out of UConn together with OEC, the Office of Early Childhood, which is the executive branch center of gravity for 2Gen, and us, who are the legislative leaders for 2Gen for the legislature. So that's you will find reports there. And please, if you would, Christina, reach out to us, and I will connect you with Melvette if you're not already connected with her. I'm sure you are, and we'll get you some of those reports.
Yeah, I was thinking this committee for the 2Gen work for the state, not the larger reference. So
you got it.
Maybe that's a good resource that we could send out. Michelle, might be of interest.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much. So my question is more about how, and maybe this is a very long story, so you can give me the brief version, but how do you go about setting your priorities for the different buckets that you described? And is there community-based, community-engaged research that happens to come up with those priorities?
Well, thank you for that. There's various levels. On the one hand, as staffers to the legislature, in so many ways, we are following the seasons of the legislature. And part of the season, there's the season of learning and the season of exploration, which is the summer and when we're off session. And usually during that season, what we're doing two different things. One, we're working with colleagues in sister states from around the country to follow what the cutting edge policy agendas may be in the various issues of various constituencies that we represent. We're also tracking some best practices from around the country. By the way, legislators are doing this too. So legislators are working with the National Conference of State Legislature, the councils of governments from around the country, leaders from around the country. They're following the pulse of what's happening. Sometimes these are things that are happening in other states that we hope will never come to Connecticut, but there's a lot to be learned. We track what Massachusetts does because Massachusetts often leads in many of these issues. So we're in the season of learning. Another thing that we do during that period of time is that we're asked by legislators to hold think tanks, to hold task forces, to hold public conversations and forums. Now, what we do, we're very intentional about how we organize this, and we are very clear with legislators that when we organize a conversation as a commission, we are not going to focus on leaders as the storytellers on the issue. It's community and community representatives that are the storytellers on the issue. We elevate them first. And I learned this from my mentor, Elaine Zimmerman, years ago, where she said, place legislators in the position of a responsive panel at the end, and they're forced to stay for the entire conversation when families from community are sharing their experiences, where people are sharing not only their hopes and dreams, but also how it is that they can advise us to help remove barriers for them. And that's critical for us. So that's what we do during the learning season. When we're in session, we are much more engaged with the work of the day-to-day work of the legislature. We might be organizing conversations around particular initiatives that may be happening in a moment. Again, always bringing members of the public to the conversations. If you were to call me tomorrow and you were to say, you know what, I've been thinking, Norwalk has been going through X, and we've been thinking a lot about how Norwalk has been responding to this particular issue. And we're curious about how other communities are not only responding, but how they're engaging families or community or people within community with lived experience. What you and I would do together then is we would sketch out what a conversation might look like that incorporates a lot of the principles that I mentioned, having a responsive panel of leaders, having the conversation led by community leaders and people with lived experience. That's a critical formula for policymaking. And what it does is it has the effect of lifting marginalized voices to the same level of access as that velvet rope gives lobbyists at the Capitol. And that's critically important because oftentimes people who are marginalized or removed from whatever may be happening at the state level, they don't know or can afford to have that level of access. We bring the velvet rope to community.
Thanks.
And for those of you who don't know, there literally is a velvet rope. It's a rope that cuts off the main halls of the legislature and the lobbyists. So you can't go up to a legislator and touch a legislator unless they come to you. It's a way to keep order in the chambers, but it's also a way to separate. It has the effect of separating people from the people who are making decisions. And we have to find ways around that. And that's something that we help do as insiders in the legislature.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to read Melody's background while anyone can take a second, well, you all can take a second to think of any other potential questions. So reading this in Melody's voice. Hi, my name is Melody D'Alessandro, sorry. I recently joined the commission a month ago and I'm looking forward to diving into its missions and goals. Professionally, I work in the biopharmaceutical industry, currently serving as the director of clinical research at Validity Clinical Research, where a major focus is implementing innovative and practical measures to increase diverse and inclusive representation in clinical trials.
That's great. That's wonderful work. Wonderful work. And I'll tell you, the work of inclusion, the work of equitable access to care, to healthcare, to medicine, to the innovative resource and research that we're seeing across the country, it doesn't stop. And it's in every sector that we have to ask the question, are you ensuring that you're not only providing opportunity, but that you're testing equitably, that you're innovating equitably so that no one is left behind. So thank you for your work.
Are there any other questions, folks? Should we give Stephen the rest of his night to enjoy? Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephen. That was really, really helpful. And I think moving forward as we plan our special session retreat to plan our priorities, a lot of what you mentioned will come up. And I think I'm going to touch base before that meeting to get some of those great resources that Sarah was brainstorming with you about. So
great. We are an ally of yours at the legislature, and we hope to be a resource. So please consider us as you move forward in your deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Have a great night.
Okay, we have an agenda. Okay. Get a speaker. The next item is the update from Michelle about the February meeting speaker.
Yep. So the chair of the Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity is Lieutenant Governor Bysowitz, and the mayor had an event with her about a month ago. So I approached her about ways we could potentially partner, potentially outreach events, potentially legislation that the commission was supporting that Stephen was just speaking to. And she would like to speak at our February 13th event to share some of her ideas. She mentioned potentially partnering with other women leaders in government to do potentially an outreach event. So we'll see what she presents. But I also think that as you all brainstorm about priorities, you could also present her with some ideas. And I'm sure she would love that. So I think that that's the only update for the following meeting. And once everyone fills out the doodle, I'll send an update as soon as possible with the confirmed special meeting so that we can make sure to understand when we'll have those priorities set based on that meeting date. Any questions about that?
All right, and I don't think that requires a vote. I think Michelle has covered out the need to fill out the doodle poll by January 14th. And I think that leaves us with a motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion? Who was that?
Jasmine.
Sorry, my cat's in my way. Second,
I'll second, Yvonne.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Sorry about my cat. Abstentions? Okay, thank you all. I'll see you possibly later this month or possibly next month.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Take care,
everyone.
everybody.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great evening. Bye.
You too.
You too.